August Brunsman is the Executive Director of the Secular Student Alliance. He's served in that position since 2001 and started getting paid for it in 2004. He also worked as a programmer for the Institute for Humanist Studies from 2001 to 2004. In 1997, he co-founded the Students for Free Thought at The Ohio State University, where he graduated Phi Beta Kappa in 2001, majoring in psychology and minoring in mathematics and cognitive science. He's the secretary of the board for the Humanist community of Central Ohio. He's volunteered in a number of roles for Camp Quest since 1999. August served as the secretary of the board of the Secular Coalition for America from 2006 through 2012. He's a member of the Humanist Society and performs non-theistic weddings, naming ceremonies, and memorial services as a humanist celebrant. His hobbies include cycling, painting, drawing, gardening, cooking, and programming. He'll speak to us this morning on Unstoppable Secular Students, Changing the Public Discourse on Religion. So please help me welcome August.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. And thank you so much, everybody, for coming out on your Sunday morning, where, as Sherry points out, you could be sleeping. So I'm honored that you are here. So today I'm going to talk about the Secular Student Alliance. So this is the Secular Student Alliance. We support a network of, right now, 400 atheist, agnostic, and humanist groups on high school and college campuses all over the country. And today I'm going to talk a bit about how we do that, but also a bit about how these secular students who are a rapidly growing, rapidly organizing part of American society, I think can help change our discourse on religion and also just our general discourse on how we make decisions as a society for the better. So let's start with a check-in on the state of the union of separation of church and state. Just a few boogeymen that I'm gonna come out and show you here. Not this is necessarily news to this audience, but here's our beloved statesman Newt Gingrich, who you'll recall, well, in addition to being Speaker of the House and holding other important roles, additionally was a serious contender for the Republican presidential nomination in the most recent election. And during that cycle, he said, "How can you have judgment if you have no faith? How can I trust you with power if you don't pray?" It gets better. So here is Paul Brown, who's representative, and he said, all that stuff I was taught about evolution and embryology and the Big Bang Theory, that is all lies straight from the pit of hell. By the way, he's on the Science and Technology Committee. Okay, and here's Jim Inhofe from Oklahoma, senator. The arrogance of people to think that we, human beings, would be able to change what he, God, is doing to the climate, or in the climate, is to me outrageous. And he is the ranking member on the Environment and Public Works Committee. So that's a little bit about, I mean, it's not everybody. I'm obviously picking a few of the folks that are probably least aligned with our vision for what the United States might be and how our society could be structured. But nonetheless, these folks are out there, and they have a whole lot more political power than people who have a more rational and secular view of the world. Oh, and so here's another example, not at the high level, but at sort of a more grassroots, bare bones kind of level. These are some pictures of the prayer caravan that apparently has been led for years by the superintendent of the Cullman County schools in Alabama. And these pictures are just from a little more than a month and a half ago. So before school starts every year, so it's not an official school event, of course, the superintendent and several other high-ranking folks, like the principals, go from school building to school building and have these prayer meetings right outside of them. And there's I don't know if you guys can read that or not, the school principal there who's being who has the red box around his head. Just one example of, this public school official leading all these students in prayer, not technically during school hours, but, you can imagine being an elementary school student or even a middle school student or a high school student and having that experience, or even just knowing that that happened, that the community was coming together in that way on those grounds. And if you were not, say, interested in praying, if you were not pious in that particular way, you can imagine how excluded you might feel and how unfair it might feel to you, or just how worried you might be about if you are going to be treated fairly, when it comes to grading, when it comes to help dealing with bullying, perhaps. It certainly does not create a level playing field. So this is, kind of another element of American society right now. So I think it's important to kind of check in and think about our past, too, in addition to where we are now. It can be easy to think that there is a solid, clear, uninterruptible trend toward progress and that things are always getting better. But unfortunately, on this kind of angle of thinking about how rational our society has been over the years, I'm afraid it's not always the case. And there's a really excellent book that I recommend all of you go out and buy called Non-Believer Nation by David Niosi, who's the president of the Secular Coalition for America. And that's the book that my next example is drawn from. So this is from the 1912 presidential election. So as you'll all recall, this was a very strange election because it actually ended up with four parties that were, serious contenders. I don't know if that's actually true of the Socialist Party, but it was actually the high water mark for the Socialist Party in 1912. Eugene Debs ended up getting 6% of the vote. But kind of the big upset thing was that Teddy Roosevelt split off from the Republican Party and formed the Bull Moose Party. And then that led to Woodrow Wilson, the Democrat, who otherwise would not have won the election, winning the election. And it is fascinating to me to hear the perspective, or the perspectives these four men had on religion, on also how science maybe should be part of our public life. And in particular, some of the things they said about Darwinian evolution are really striking. So Wilson, who won, was the most, in regards to his attitudes towards religion, was actually the most pious of the four. When asked about natural selection, evolution by natural selection, Wilson stated, "Of course, like every other man of intelligence and education, I do believe in organic evolution. It surprises me that at this late date, such questions should be raised." Stainless steel had not yet been invented. The crossword puzzle had not yet been invented. Women would not gain the right to vote universally in the United States for 8 more years. This was 52 years after publication of Origin of Species. And he's right. At this late date, at that late date, it shouldn't have been up for discussion, but yet it still was. Roosevelt was a huge Darwin fan, actually. He often referred to Darwin as the Great Darwin. And he would later write in a memoir, "Thank heaven that I sat at the feet of Darwin and Huxley," Huxley being Thomas Henry Huxley, Darwin's bulldog. And then Taft. So Taft was the incumbent. Taft was a sitting president and a Republican nonetheless. And I want you to try to imagine any Republican saying these words today, let alone somebody who had managed to win the White House. "I do not believe in the divinity of Christ, and there are many other postulates of the Orthodox Creed to which I cannot subscribe." Yeah, things have changed. And then Eugene Debs, which, he was the socialist candidate. He only got 6% of the vote, although kind of remarkable that he got 6% of the vote. But, just to give a flavor for Debs, I don't have a Darwinian quote or a quote about that, but just sort of to get his general, position towards religion. One of his quotes is, "I do not know of any crime that the oppressors and their hirelings have not proven by the Bible." So, I can't even, see Ralph Nader saying that. anyhow. So that's kind of where we came from, and we checked in about where we were. So a lot of people are very, very hopeful about the rise of the nuns, and N-O-N-E-S, not N-U-N-S. So not people in habits. But when you call people up on the phone, when you are a survey researcher, and you call them up and you ask them, what religion do you have? And you say none, or what religion do you identify as? And you say none, you are counted as a nun. And it turns out that social scientists have been asking this question for decades, and you can split out people's responses by what decade or what generation they belong to, so when they came of age. And you can kind of plot that over time, because there is some change within the generations. So you have the greatest generation, from the 1970s to the mid-2000s, they went from 3% none to 5% none. The silent generation went from 6% to 8%. Boomers, 13, fluctuation within, but ended up right where they started. Generation X, around 20%, and the millennials, 26%. So the big trend that I want you to notice here, and we'll return to this, it'll be important later to look at what might be a new trend, is that the change is happening between generations, not very much within generations. So I see this as somewhat of a hopeful sign to be hopeful about society in general, but and also maybe thinking that, students are probably a worthwhile place to put our energies and our attention. That said, I want to make it really, really clear that I see the rise of the nuns as an opportunity and not a victory. Because there's over 68% of the nuns identify with some religion, which does not, by the way, and I hope, and I should make this very clear, especially given this audience, I do not think subscribing to a religion automatically makes you irrational at all. I'm not saying that. I do think that it can throw some wrenches in the works, and it kind of complicates the way information gets used as far as manipulating power, but that's kind of a more elaborate, complicated discussion, which maybe we can get into in the Q&A or at coffee or whatever. But most of these folks are not necessarily out there dedicated to, living more ethical and better lives through the application of reason and compassion. Maybe they are, but they also are throwing in some less careful ways of thinking. So I contend to you that we are not merely nuns, but that we are, I'm going to use this word secular American. I don't mean to label all of you, but I think that kind of gets at what we're doing. So Americans who see reason and compassion as the building blocks of their lives. And the way we think about things at the Secular Student Alliance, we are very interested in having young students stand up, and old students too, actually, because there's plenty of non-traditional students, and we want to support them and embrace them just as much as traditional students. We want people to stand up and be counted as secular Americans. And we think that that's really important, and that nuns are definitely a pool from which we can draw. But also, if you look at the data of people who claim that they are religious or they identify as a religion, the telephone researcher calls them up and says, "What religion are you?" And they say Lutheran or whatever, and then go on to ask them, "Well, do you believe in God?" 2% of people that answer that they have a religion say that they don't believe in God. So that works out to something like 5 million Americans who identify with a congregation, but are more secular in their thinking, which I think is really interesting. So that overlap of nuns and secular Americans is not perfect. So that last trend that we talked about, that had the change happening within generations. And that's the sort of common trend. But there's a new pattern, which I think is exciting and hopeful. So there's a lot going on in this graph, and I apologize, and I should have made it bigger, but here we are. Bear with me. So this is a question that Pew asked, and they've been asking it for years. And the question, do you agree or disagree? I never doubt the existence of God, or never doubt God's existence. And split out by generation, just like before, you've got the silent generation, boomers, Gen X, and the millennials. Silent in the dark blue, boomers in the light blue, Generation X in the lighter tan, and millennials in the gold. And you sort of see although it's more closely grouped together, you kind of see that trend of, silence in top, boomers in the middle, Generation X under that, millennials below that. So not much change within a generation, and there's this stacking. But then you look at the millennials, and we have something, as far as I know, unprecedented in change of attitude towards religion, which is this pretty big change within a generation. So you see the millennials going from 83% saying that they sometimes doubt the existence of God, saying they never doubt the existence of God, going down to 68% when they asked the question in 2012. So this really quite substantial jump in doubt. And doubting does not mean that you are going out and, putting atheist bumper stickers on everything you own. But it is, I think, a really interesting trend to see that change, which makes me further excited about dealing with students and kind of creating a population of students that are more interested in scientific and critical inquiry, in compassion, in democracy, in secularism, in human-based ethics. So there are other reasons to focus on students as well, in addition to the obvious demographic trends that I was talking about. Students are hungry for new identities and new ideas. When people go to college, they are often trying to figure out what it is they think about the world, how the world works. And even in high school, students are very much trying to figure out who they are. So they're really, really eager and much more open to having these conversations than folks that are older. Not all the time, obviously, but in general, that's a really strong trend. Students who are at college, especially for the first time, are usually in a new place, so they're very eager to reach out and create new social circles. So that also kind of creates an opportunity to engage them in a new movement. Student groups, again, especially at colleges, but this is true of high schools as well to some extent, have access to student activities funds and often have access very, very greatly reduced cost access to space that the university is paying for, and the university will continue paying for because they are excited in seeing enrollment stay high. And they believe, because they pay attention to the data in this case, that putting money into student activities tends to increase retention and recruitment. So, in addition to all that, students are the future. If you want to have a voice in the newsroom or the council room or the courtroom of today, of course it makes sense to have a voice in the classroom of today. Because those students are going to go out to become doctors, they are going to go out and become politicians, they're going to go out and become corporate CEOs, and of course some of them, the lucky few, will go out and become professional spokespeople. So students are the future, and it's a really valuable and important thing to be engaging them because we want to change the future. But secular students are also the present. There are dozens and dozens of secular students who are out there doing amazing things. There's Jessica Alquist from Rhode Island who stood up for separation of church and state in her high school and sort of, in addition to getting a prayer banner removed, also kind of exposed a lot of intense dislike for secularists that maybe would not have, that anybody would have, nobody would have expected existed in Cranston, Rhode Island. I certainly didn't, but it was there, and she had a terrible time. But now that's out there, and people are dealing with it and talking about it. Zach Coplin, who is, I think he just launched a lawsuit against the state of Louisiana about their science curricula, and that it includes creationism, and he's been fighting and campaigning against that since his high school days. And Daniel Koster from Orlando area. He was recently-ish, involved in doing a distribution of atheist literature when there was a distribution of Bibles at his public school, public schools in his district. And it would have been great to kind of get that shut down, but at the very least, he and his group actually provided some balance to that and kind of raised awareness of, oh, hey, there are other perspectives, there are other voices, we need to be aware of that. And these three are just a tiny sample of all the students that are out there standing up for their rights. So these students provide all sorts of things to each other. We help them provide those things. So these are some students from East Carolina University who are getting ready to table on their campus activity fair day, where, like a day or two before classes start, they will get out and try to convince other students to come to their club. These communities can be really important at colleges. Sometimes when a student goes away to college, this is the first time that they have been able to be affirmed for having doubts and thinking critically and being skeptical. So having that community can be really valuable because sometimes those students are very, very isolated and are living, in a closeted lifestyle from their family and friends. I know people who, wanted it, like whenever there was a group photo, they always stepped to the side or offered to take the group photo because they absolutely could not have their parents find out they were involved in this, in whatever group, in an atheist group. So that community can be really important at college. Can be even more important in high school. We have, I think, 47 groups at high schools right now, and not everybody gets to go to college. And that may be increasingly the case, given the kind of economic trends that we're dealing with right now in the United States. So it's really important to provide these communities to high school students as well. We provide community in law school. We have 4, count them 4, groups at law schools. This is the group from the OSU Law School. And there are a lot of lawyers that are very interested in tearing down the wall of separation in church and state. So we think it's really important to provide communities to lawyers that maybe have a different perspective on that, or future lawyers, as the case may be, and to help educate their fellow law students on those perspectives. We provide community everywhere. We played a big role in the Reason Rally, which, did anybody here go to the Reason Rally? It was, all right, a few of you. It was great. It was kind of rainy. But there were 20,000 or more reasonable people on the mall in Washington, D.C., between the Capitol and the Washington Monument. It was a very, very exciting day. And there were lots and lots of young people and lots of students who got to be on stage. Secular Student Alliance played a role in that. We're very proud to have played a role in it. And whatever the case, be it the Reason Rally or any of the other things, any of the other activities, when we get covered in the news, when somebody hears about a group of ours, when they read about us on Reddit or Facebook or Twitter, even a student that doesn't have a Secular Student Alliance at their school can know that there are other students out there that think the same way or think a similar way. And that can be really important and valuable when you have a identity which in many cases, if you are out and proud about it in the United States, unfortunately still kind of creates you or puts you into the pariah category. So that can be important. So in addition, our groups promote acceptance. Here's the group from UCLA counter-protesting the Westboro Baptist Church, learning important things that God hates signs, but he loved Inception, and otherwise just kind of providing a pushback. And GLBT activism in particular is something that many of our groups are really passionate about. So in addition to that, education is something that we really try to promote. Our campus groups have started all kinds of shouldn't say many, some of them are huge, all kinds of conferences all over the country that bring in speakers to talk about secular issues, secular topics. They're, for some reason, very, very popular in the Midwest. And the biggest one is Skepticon, which is in Missouri, and brings over 1,000 people, is free, and was started by the students there. And Free Thought Festival in Madison, Wisconsin is really big, and so are all these other ones. But there are students who are, providing this vehicle of, having secular speakers come out and talk to communities that probably were not getting those voices heard before. And the conferences are open to people of all ages. So this is a really great thing that local student activists are doing all over the country. We promote discussion. So there are lots of groups that participate with religious groups on campus and create dialogue with them in all kinds of different ways. A really popular way is service projects. This is not an example of a joint service project, but here's the Secular Student Alliance celebrating having raised over $3,200 for the Light the Night Walk that supports research against leukemia and lymphoma. And they won the award for their group size at their school for raising that much money. And lots of our groups participate in service. This is the only world we have, at least until we, create space elevators or whatever it is. And it's certainly the only life we have, well, as far as we can tell anyway. It's the only life we know we have. We're social creatures, and it makes sense to make the world a better place, and it gives us joy. So a lot of our groups engage in service projects. Our groups help dissolve stigma. We were talking about that earlier, but doing things like Hug an Atheist is a really cute way to, again, I think they were actually raising money for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. For $1, you could hug an atheist and learn how amazing it is to hug an atheist. And then also, support cancer research. Another really important thing we do is that we sit at the table. So this young man up here is Evan Clark, who started a Secular Student Alliance group at California Lutheran University. And we have a handful of groups at religious campuses. There's a really, really healthy group at DePaul right here in Chicago. But at California Lutheran, Evan started this group, Secular Student Alliance group, and got lots of members. He was there on a tennis scholarship, which is why he, a non-Lutheran, was at California Lutheran University. And there are lots and lots of other people he found out that, either were not out to their family or were out to their family like him, and, they got a baseball scholarship or whatever it is. And they were part of this community, part of the California Lutheran system, but they were also non-believers. And Evan created a little community for them, which was great. But then he decided that he wanted to run for student body president of California Lutheran University as the most open atheist on campus. Much like in 1912, there was a split between the two other, there was a three-way race is what ended up happening, and Evan ended up winning. So for a year, So for a year, he was the president of the student body of California Lutheran University. And now there's, I forget her name, there's another young woman who was not the president of the Secular Student Alliance at California Lutheran, but a member who also got elected to be student body president. And California Lutheran has actually been great about it. But, Evan and this other woman, they're sitting at the table while decisions are getting made. Student body president, contrary to what you may have been led to believe as an undergraduate, does not give you ultimate power, but it's still a really visible position, and having that sort of inside voice to being around the table, even right now, not waiting until somebody gets elected. And I hope, I hope that more secular folks do get elected. Right now, there are very, very few. But right now, this is going on. Right now, we're having that seat at the table. And I think that's an incredibly important thing, and I hope we continue to do it. And our students are out there doing it. We have all kinds of fun. Saul Alinsky, who the famous or infamous activist, said, I quote something along the lines, your tactics have to be fun. If your people aren't having fun, then they're not worth doing. Then the projects aren't worth doing. So here's one of our groups for dressing up as pirates, celebrating their Pastafarian faith. Does everybody know? Is anybody not familiar with the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster? Okay, good. A couple people. All right. Well, it is a very real faith that was started in Kansas when they were trying to teach creationism in public schools, and this fellow called up the State Board of Education and was like, well, if you're going to teach all the perspectives, I really hope you're teaching, well, he wrote, actually, I really hope you're going to be teaching about my faith, which says that the flying spaghetti monster reached out with his noodly appendage and created the world. And they were like, you're not serious, right? And he was like, oh, yeah, I'm really serious. I have lawyers. Let's go. And that sort of helped roll that back. But one of the tenets of the flying spaghetti monster faith is that they have noticed the trend that as there have been fewer pirates in the world, global temperatures have gone up. So clearly, pirates fight global warming. So you want to prevent global warming by dressing up like a pirate or being a pirate. So that's what's going on here. That's why they're dressed up like pirates. And because it's fun. So those are some things that our student groups are doing. So the National SSA, based in Columbus, Ohio, but we have regionals in Indiana and Texas and Alabama and California. And Kate works for us, and she's right here at Northwestern. Apparently I've embarrassed her. We help students learn from each other and inspire each other and get connected. help them spread good ideas. And I'm going to go through this part really fast because I'm running out of time. But we help support ideas that students come up with, and then we spread them around, like Ask an Atheist Day. It's always the third Thursday in April every year. It started at, I believe, the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana, and it's spread to over 100 other campuses, and we give out stickers and things like that. But, I mean, it's simple. You just set up a table on your quad, put up a sign that says Ask an Atheist. And it's not designed to convert, change anybody's mind about what they believe. It's designed to create exposure and familiarity. And students can come up and ask questions like what do atheists think happens after you die? Where do you get your values and morals as an atheist? What other really important questions like what do atheists yell during sex other than oh God? You get these things addressed, and people can understand atheists better. Another popular event is Stone a Heathen. So you get water balloons, and you can stone a heathen for $1 and raise money for whatever cause. Brother Jed Bingo. Brother Jed is an itinerant preacher. He's apparently about to get a reality TV show. But he goes around with he's got, kind of a posse, and he has this really predictable shtick. He'll get down on one knee and point at somebody who's dressed, well, frankly, normally, but in his eyes, in a slutty fashion, and will point at a young woman and yell, whore! Or whoremonger at a guy. And it occurs to me I probably should not have aimed my finger at the audience while doing that. I apologize. I should have gone off to the side. I did not think that through. But anyway, he has a really predictable shtick. And he goes from campus to campus to campus. So something that our groups have started to pass around is Brother Jed Bingo. Sometimes they just have a sign like that, and you color them in as he does his predictable things. Sometimes you have bingo cards, and whoever gets bingo first will win a prize. So it's kind of fun ways. So another way that we spread ideas is through our conferences. This is our conference group shot from 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. And then this year we had 2 conferences, both at the Ohio State University, which is the bigger one, and then we had a West Coast conference venue at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. So our conferences are almost... they're half and half student and non-student speakers, but about half of it is student speakers, so teaching each other. But the whole thing is very focused on activism as opposed to 10 more reasons to doubt the historicity of Jesus. It's fine, you're welcome to talk about that, but that's not who we tend to invite. We tend to invite people to talk about how to run a really effective meeting, or how to build community, or how to raise money from your campus. Another thing we do is the group running guide. I brought a few of them. They are out on the literature table in the back. It's a really fun book that talks about how to run a group. Something we're really excited about and just got covered in the Atlantic is the Secular Safe Zone program. So this is a program aimed at individual students, but also aimed at educators and administrators at schools. Basically, it's modeled off the LGBT Safe Zone program, and educators, or anybody actually, can go online and take our training or do a training in person, and they can be a Safe Zone ally, and they can hang up a sign in their classroom so that students can know that they are safe people to talk to about their doubts or their identity as a non-theist, or just kind of what they're thinking about it, and a way to have an adult in their life who they can talk to about these things who will not freak out. So we think this is going to be a really, really important program. We are very excited about it. There's information sheets also about this that are on the table in the back. I know I've shown you a lot of scary things. I want to give you a little bit of a reason for hope. I want to compare Cru, formerly Campus Crusade for Christ, and the Secular Student Alliance. Cru teaches its members to follow doctrine. SSA teaches them to question and inquire. Cru teaches that people are inherently sinful. SSA teaches they have inherent value. Cru says there's an afterlife. SSA says this is our only life, or at least the only one we know about. Cru encourages abstinence and represses sexuality. SSA encourages safe sex, positive sexuality, and sex education. Cru believes that homosexuality is unnatural and that transgender is unspeakable. SSA supports LGBTQ equality. Cru downplays climate change. We encourage activism on climate change. Cru supports intelligent design. We encourage and defend teaching of Darwinian evolution. So, who's winning? So Cru's annual budget It's actually over $500 million, but yeah, I think $612 million was the last number I got from there. I think that was their 2011 990. SSA's annual budget, $946,000. That was our best year ever, by the way, and last year. And yeah, and it was like almost double the year before. Which is a good trend, but it's that's us in an awesome year. So Crew has 3 organizers for every one of their campus groups. For every one of our organizers, we have about 50 campus groups. Yeah, a little bit of a difference there. From 2007 to 2011, which is the most recent period we have information about Crew, they went from 1,491 groups to 1,742 groups, so 16% growth. In that same period, the SSA went from 119 to 258 groups. So it's an encouraging trend. We'll see if it continues, but we're definitely excited about that. But I think that growth is really impressive and really important, and I think that this set of students, this network that we've been building, that we've been creating, I think that it's a really valuable tool. There's the famous Archimedes quote about, give me a lever and a place to stand and I can move the world. And I think this is one heck of a lever that we have built and are building, and that students all over the country are building. And I think it is going to help change the culture. I think it is already changing the culture. And I'm really, really happy about that. Before I open up to questions, I do want to encourage you to obviously support the ethical humanists here. But after you've done that, I would encourage you to consider supporting the Secular Student Alliance. We are a 501c3 educational nonprofit. Right now, Sam Harris is doing a $30,000 matching offer. So any donations get doubled, which is pretty exciting. You remember about Cullman County? Something we're going to try to do to kind of intervene with situations like that where we don't have a group is right now we are trying to fundraise for a rapid response organizer, somebody who has the funding and training to, when we hear about an incident along those lines, or the next Jessica Alquist or whatever it is, we hear about these things all the time. We have somebody who can make a couple quick phone calls, see if the situation is a real situation, and then get on a plane the next day and go down and meet the students and let them know we have their backs, and meet the parents hopefully and let them know that their children, are not freaks, are not going to burn anything down just because they don't believe in God. You can talk to the administrators and let them know, hey, you've got an opportunity here. Look at these demographic trends. This is a growing part of the student body that you're supporting, these non-religious students. Be proactive. Join the future. Be on the right side of history by embracing the diversity of your students rather than pushing against it. And, oh, by the way, it's the law that you have to protect them. So that's something we're trying to do right now. Rapid.secularstudents.org. If you're interested in supporting that, you can go there and donate and learn more about the campaign. Thank you very much. I'd love to have your questions.